It's time for another episode of Security Decoded. I got my big brain friend right here, Chris, and we're going to talk about the security news for the last week. In that security news is new vulnerabilities for iOS, and that have been repaired with iOS that was just released yesterday. New vulnerabilities in the Android device. We'll talk about the future of malware and a bunch of other subjects. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back with Security Decoded. Hello and welcome to Security Decoded on TechZen TV. Today I'm sitting here with Chris and we're going to talk about this past week in the news and security news. So we're going to start right from the top and we're going to talk about iOS. This week iOS had a new release. It's a 6.1. It fixes some vulnerabilities that were in iOS. The CA certificates were mistakenly issued from Turk Trust that could allow a man-in-the-middle attack. That was fixed in this update. There is also some cross-site scripting vulnerabilities that were in iOS that have been fixed in this update as well. And while we're on iOS, we want to talk about a store, a pirated app store that has some apps on it. And basically what they have done with this is they use the Apple system for distributing apps inside of a corporation. And they have created a fake app store and it can be distributed by a link. And it's not really a huge security risk. But if somebody gets the spam, they could actually install the malware. So how big an issue do you think this really is?
I think it would all be based on who gets the links and what they're downloading and what they're seeing with respect to that. I'd be more concerned about people, the certificate issues and the mismatch on that. I know Apple has been they're usually pretty quiet about their vulnerabilities until they send their patches out. So once their patches come out or their new iOS comes out, you'll hear a big thing about what's going on. They usually don't try to put fear into the public. I know a lot of other people and a lot of other vendors will go, oh, we have a vulnerability or we have a problem, and then they won't, and they'll disclose it and not send any kind of patches out. So Apple's been always pretty good about that. So they'll get it out and say, hey, we got a solution for you, as opposed to not having a solution. And they make it really easy to download the new these patches. I mean, if you got a mobile device or if you have
it's automatic updates, real easy to do.
Exactly. So it works out pretty well.
Right. So how long do you think it'll take them to get it fixed?
Probably not long at all.
You think it's a huge security issue they need to get working on fast? Or?
I think any kind of security issue has risk. So, I mean, any company's it's all based on risk. So usually a quick turnaround is the best thing. So I would usually say within 5 business days. I know with Java, when they had their previous vulnerabilities where they said they had with Oracle had no kind of patching or anything in place, and they wanted people to disable Java, they were real quick to get their turnaround because it impacts business. It impacts money. I mean, you look at, you're not able to do business. People get scared. They don't want to do certain things, and time is money when it comes to that kind of aspect.
That's right. That's right. All right, so let's go to another subject that actually Windows 8.
Yes.
So Windows. What do you think? First of all, what do you think Windows 8?
I think Windows 8 is the next Vista. I think it's going to get passed
very
over.
Good.
I mean,
it's not really a discussion we want to talk too much about.
I almost think it's a null issue to really even think about what's going on with Windows 8. I mean, it's the same. It's just. Instead of getting your blue screen of death, you get a little more prettier screens and different components that are on there that make it.
I can't get used to the interface. It's just weird.
Not at all.
But Windows 8, there is a piece of malware going around that claims to activate Windows 8. So you can download Windows 8 from somewhere and run this program and you get your free copy of Windows 8. However, not all good things are really true. And in this case, that is the case. It's actually a piece of malware that is tricking people into downloading it and installing it. So this is something that's just out, I believe yesterday or today I heard about this. And I think it actually could be dangerous. People want something for free, want to check out Windows.
Everybody wants a free ride. I mean, it's easy to do that. I mean, what's funny is you look at the antivirus companies that are out there, how quick that they're going to be able to put out to search for this malware. I tell you, I'm a strong, if you're using a Microsoft product and Microsoft Essentials is pretty good. So, I mean, I guess the proof is in the pudding. Is how quick are you going to have a signature out there that's going to look for something like that when you're on your regular version? Look at most people that can barely even handle Windows XP.
That's
and
right.
you're going up to Windows 7, and people are starting to do that migration, and now you have Windows 8. It's going too fast.
Yeah, and then this is going to be a surprise to them. They download this thing thinking they're going to get Windows 8, which doesn't, from what I understand, doesn't even activate it. It just infects you in the process of doing it.
I mean, you'll see your screen. So. I mean, a typical when you have something that's running in the back, or that's like a rootkit or something. Rootkit being that it's something that you don't know that's going on in the background. You may see your screen flash, and that's the end of it. And you got a listener set up for a command and control. I'm not too sure if you can elaborate a little more on what this is. This a backdoor, or is this a Trojan, or is it more an info stealer? Or?
It's more an info stealer because when you go to register, ask you for information, personal information to register it, and that's where it collects the information. But it does not activate Windows, and it just basically is a phishing scam. So
it's pretty lightweight then. With
it's pretty lightweight.
What's happening?
Yeah, but I see a lot of people getting tricked by that.
But I mean, one of the things that I've done in the past, and I know you've done that. Have you had a chance to actually see it and reverse it, or
no? Actually, I haven't done that yet.
Because that would be the good thing to do. Is it's always interesting to reverse that piece of software. What it looks like it's doing in the front and what it's doing in the background.
Right.
Be two different things.
Right. All right. So let's talk a little about Skype. In the last week here, we've heard about some malware that's propagating via Skype, and this isn't the first time we've ever had this happen with Skype. But this is called Shylock, and it spreads via Skype. And it's actually a worm, and it copies itself from Skype to Skype. Let's see. Based on the analysis, actually they're calling this worm public.gx, and it installs itself as a plugin. Actually, there's another worm too. Worm Kepsi is another one.
No, a lot of times malware companies, different companies will have slightly different names for their malware.
Right.
So the audience should probably realize
right.
that. A lot of these are one and the same, but there's really no unified standard when it
right.
comes
The best
to
thing
malware.
to do is go to somewhere like
reputable.
Malwarebytes, something like that. Put the name
Total.
in. Virus Total, something like that. Will give you the different names as well. So this is not the first time that Skype's had this problem. It just seems like it's starting to spread itself a little bit more.
I wonder if this is almost targeted to the fact that Skype is finally. I mean, Microsoft, owns Skype now.
Right, and
so
they just dropped it. They just dropped Microsoft Messenger and converted it to Skype.
And,
so.
and it's. I mean, they're going into the integration of what's called Microsoft Link. So I mean, Microsoft Link was Microsoft's version of it, and in time you're just going to see Skype drop out.
Right.
And sometimes you wonder if this is just the timing on this is almost too surreal to
yeah.
the fact that
Yep.
that there was.
They got a bigger market all of a sudden.
Exactly.
They got the hit. Just like anything, you get a big market, they're going to start targeting this. And actually, with things that Skype's been doing recently, it actually hasn't been working as well as it used to be with all the conversions that they've been doing. So if you use Skype, just be careful. The other thing I had.
Don't pull any plugins in.
Yeah, don't put any plugins. The other thing I've had in the last 2 weeks, I've had 2 phone calls from system maintenance on Skype, and I'm like, system maintenance. So from after looking it up, what I found is instead of calling your home to say your machine needs maintenance, they're now calling you on Skype saying, hey, you have a problem with your machine. We need to get one and fix it.
You bring up an interesting subject. I've had to deal with that in my day job, and I've seen a lot of where people will come back, and it's a concerted effort where you'll have what we call phone phishing. And I mean, there's a lot
for maintenance and stuff?
I mean,
yeah.
from routine maintenance over the telephone, and it's more phishing where they're asking you for information saying there's malware on your machine, and you're opening up a WebEx session to...
and the average home user wouldn't know any difference, or the office
you're
worker.
Thinking Microsoft's calling you up, and I mean, that's the thing. You hang up the phone. You never
exactly.
get any information. I know there's a couple of places, and this would be fun to do, but I wouldn't recommend it to anybody unless you know what you're doing, is to set up a virtual machine and have them go in.
Actually, that's what I said. Next time they called me, that's what I was going to do.
Have a little fun setting that up. I've seen that where people have done that, and they've set it up and said, oh, by the way, we're recording everything that you've been doing off of here. And that's
I was talking about even setting up a machine, a VM that was like, look like the FBI. When they got in there and started doing maintenance on it, come up as a federal bureau investigation.
Now, the interesting twist to this with the phone phishing is I've been finding that they're doing what's called anti-spoofing. So you'll see numbers that look totally legitimate. They'll even come up. So if you have caller ID or different things on there, they'll try to pull legitimate numbers off and spoof.
Which is part of the system maintenance in Skype. System maintenance was calling me. So.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's the automatic number identification spoof. Right. So it's another new slight twist to that. So the same thing.
Yep. All right. So kind of on the same instant messenger, we'll give fair equal time to other ones. Of course, Windows Messenger is gone. This problem existed in Windows Messenger as well. But Yahoo and the old Windows Messenger, which is still being phased out, it actually has a remote access Trojan that's being distributed via Yahoo and Windows Messenger as well, and it's called Fake M. Again, it could be a different name depending on what malware, anti-malware vendor you're using. So be careful about that. It's definitely spreading. They're definitely spreading things around. And if you're not familiar with the remote access Trojan, that actually gives them access to your machine remotely, so it can do very nasty things as well. All right, so we've had this question before. What do cyber criminals do with your data? And so I went out kind of searching for different business plans, basically our business plans. I mean, it's amazing the amount of money they make with these things. And there's a whole business behind it.
I mean, I've seen dollar amounts on different things. You'll see like $30 for a social security number. You'll
Right.
see like $10 for a credit card, depending on the credit card and the scratch. I mean, there's just a whole myriad.
Yeah, actually, this one article I was reading, it was $5 to buy all your personal information. And let's see, what it included everything. It included your address, your social security number, all kinds of stuff for $5. That's just crazy.
It sounds like the market's going down a little bit, though. It used to be a little more expensive, but now, I mean, that's a little concerning. It makes you wonder if it's $5 for all your personal information. That must mean that, I mean, it's so rampant now that, that the supply and demand has gotten the price down for different pieces of what they call the PII, the personally identifiable information.
This article I was reading, they call it fools. I never heard that term before. The underground forums where they buy the stuff is called fools. Basically, it's your full information package is what it ends up being. And they'll sell like 10,000 or 20,000 at a time, and then they'll resell that data if they don't use it all to somebody else as well. So as far as what they do with the information, they'll go through and if you ever had a charge on your credit card, it's minimal and it's like $3 or $4. They're basically checking to see if your card's valid, and if it is, they'll start buying high-end electronics from places. So
a lot of credit card companies are pretty
savvy
on that.
They're getting much better now.
Savvy because if you leave your geographic location or if something comes up from
an
area
they call you,
they'll do one transaction and they'll put a hold on your card. I've seen that.
Yep.
So
I've
a
had it
lot
happen
of it's
to me.
been catching up, and it's been very good on that.
I've had it happen just going to West Virginia. It was like 2 miles away, and it came back, or Virginia, and you get a call saying you changed states. I'm like, well, yeah, I only live a couple miles from there. So
I mean, they're coming up with it's more predictive. It's predictive patterns of buying and selling, and they realize what you're doing and where your locations are and your habits are, your circadian rhythm of the day. If you go to Starbucks in the morning,
that's right.
If you're at the bar in the afternoon, they'll know what particular place. And if you're going over to,
which drives people nuts, them knowing what all you do. I mean, privacy. Whole different side of security. But
that's a whole broach subject that there's no expectation of privacy anymore in the world.
That's right. There's
George Orwell was right, but he was like,
people think they have security is crazy. Just assume everybody knows everything about you at this point. One of the other things they talk about is they sell these same people that sell this information will also sell the plastic cards so they can make credit cards. Yeah. So I mean, I've heard people even using like hotel room keys and redoing the mag stripe on them with the credit card information, and they still work fine. If you go to a gas station and go in, it doesn't know the difference.
I can't remember the company. There was a company a few years back that marketed that for the one card. Instead of carrying multiple cards, you just mag stripe it, and you would have the mag stripe right there. Oh, yeah, switch the card out.
I saw that. I can't remember who made that. It was a little thing, it had little buttons on it, and you just slide the card in and out.
Different, and it would have a mag stripe.
That's kind of scary. That device is holding your credit card information. Oops, I lost all my credit cards.
That's exactly it.
Probably some kind of hack into that as well. All right, so we want to talk a little bit like what small businesses should look for coming up in the year or throughout 2013 a little bit. We talked last time a little bit about some predictions, and there's more of these coming out all the time. And in the next year or so, small and medium businesses are going to be moving more to cloud storage and a lot more mobile devices, which is
it's a double-edged sword.
That's right, exactly. It's scary in one way, but
you're giving up security to the organization that's outside of you. So if you have a good group or you're good people that are there that are able to handle it, or you have a good consultant that's in, you're gonna have good security there.
Right. The best thing to do with that in that situation is also encrypt your data on your side. Don't allow the provider to encrypt it for you, because they hold the keys to your data at that point, and it's easier for people to get that information. But even mobile devices, we're talking about smart mobile devices. They're everywhere. There's no getting away from it. It's never going to end. So we have to start securing those devices. In fact, we'll talk here a little bit about some Android flaws as well.
Writing the policy on some BYOD for a company before. We were in the infancy of writing that policy, and it's gotten to the point where you have your Android, your operating systems, you have your Apple, you have your iOS, you have BlackBerry, and it's integrating in they're all three. I mean, it's writing a unified policy for everything, but the software companies are getting better at being able to handle every one of them. So you have one size fits all, and that's where the beauty of BYOD is going to come. Is you're
looking at some kind of mobile device management system to keep track of that.
Exactly, that's centralized.
Right. That doesn't solve the cloud issue. You know, ultimately, the cloud issue becomes a trust issue with your provider. I mean, you really have to have great contracts with them to say that they're responsible for the data.
And you got to know what standards.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
If they attest to the ISO 17799, or if they're attesting.
Right. It takes some research. You just don't want to go throwing data in the cloud.
You have to make sure that they sign it, that they're having yearly audits, that they're going through and making sure that the integrity of the data in their data center is there. The other big thing about cloud providers is business continuity. What are you going to do if you have another? I mean, it's part of security, quasi, but it's still, if that data center goes down, how's your data going to be protected, and where's it going, and what?
Right, you have to know what they're doing in the back end to help keep your data safe. You're assuming they're keeping it safe. You should never assume that. So moving beyond the computers and laptops that we use every day means we have more devices, because now we have, you have the iPads, you have your iPhones, you have Android devices, Blackberries. Everybody's carrying some kind of mobile device around, so you got a lot more devices you have to secure now than just that one piece of hardware that you gave somebody when they first came to work for you. So.
Mike and I were talking earlier about the show, and the other thing that I think small to mid-sized businesses really need to be worried about is what they're advertising to the public internet and what's going on. There's a company out there called Rapid7, and I was reading up on this tonight, and there was millions of devices that are using what's called universal plug and play. So they're discovering devices behind small and mid-sized businesses that are advertising these different services that are out there that have, and this is for like plug and play. Like if you want to plug something in, it'll automatically figure out the operating system, what it is, and find the appropriate drivers to install it. And if you got that stuff out there, I mean, it touches on the subject of what you talked about as data leakage prevention.
That's right.
I mean, you're advertising yourself, and you want to advertise the least amount of what you have to your public, except
right.
what you want
a great example of that is like Lantronix makes this print server now. It's a tiny little print server. You plug in your network, and it finds all your printers. But to do that, it has to go out to its website to get information. So you've just sent out all your whole network configuration to get drivers for your printers. So that's a data leakage in a way. Not a very high risk data leakage, but there's always risk. There's always risk.
I mean, that's one thing in security that I always tell people. People always ask me, "Are we secure?" And I always tell them, you either got a high level of confidence or a low level of confidence. You never give somebody a 100% answer, but you tell them at the best in layers that you have where you are.
So you brought up BYOD. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
Just in case some people aren't aware of what it is, it's bring your own device. So basically, it's where the employee brings their own device, and that it could be as simple as a cell phone or an iPad. But some companies are going as far as you go buy your own hardware. We'll subsidize the hardware when you purchase it. You go get what you want and you bring it in. So that brings a lot of challenges into the environment.
It brings a couple of challenges into the environment for securing the information, depending on the sensitivity of the mail and the information that's transpiring. But it also is a problem for the individual user too. So say if that user separates from the company and they have a lot of stuff that's personal on their devices, and the problem and the biggest challenge with BYOD is separating the personal information from the business information. And when that person leaves, you're able to cut them loose but still preserve their personal information. Right. So either you do that in policy where you have a good policy where your personal information is backed up in a certain area and you do a backup on that periodically, but then your corporate information is kept in another area. But there's a lot of, like Good is one of the companies that's out there that's coming up with some good encrypted services where you'll have information that's out there, and it's email, it's also file collaboration, and there's also there's a few apps that are out there. I'm speaking strictly for iOS, but there are I mean Good also goes for Android in different areas. Right. But I mean ActiveSync also works from the Microsoft perspective, where if you're using Exchange Mail, which is very nice, it'll just pull it right off. And you have the potential to wipe your drive if it's gone. So you broach a myriad of interesting subjects that come on there.
And then we didn't even talk about like laptops. I mean, how do you say your laptop is safe on our network? You have the right antivirus. So you have all those as well. Like you have to have certain requirements to bring your own device as far as a laptop goes as well.
I mean, and that comes into entry points and exit points where, I mean, from a policy perspective, are you going to allow people physically on your network to use use the wireless
Right, or
components, or are you just going to use the cellular component where you're
right,
using
or
the
do you
digital
use some kind of VPN
3G?
through a guest network into your network, that type of thing as well?
I mean, and it opens up potential NAC
Right.
solutions, and are you going to use
right.
any kind of NAC, or what are you going to use to maintain compliance on systems?
Right. So in doing BYOD and cloud and smart mobile devices, we now have more working environments. So I'm talking like you're taking a couple hours off to go work at Starbucks because you want to drink a coffee, write a report, something like that. So now you have environments where you have people all around you, so you have more possibility of data leakage just by people looking over your shoulder.
No, that's where it comes into a policy issue. I was actually at a conference one time where I saw if you Bluetooth enabled, I mean, people can actually come through and go through your Bluetooth and gain access potentially to your system.
That's right.
There's entry points where people can come in and go through there and pull information. So it's what you have in policy. If you decide that you're going to do BYOD with your personal device and decide that that's going to be there, what are you going to accept as an individual? Are you going to allow Bluetooth to be turned on or off? Are you going to allow pairing, listening? Are you going to allow your device to be wiped if it's removed? There's certain controls and certain things that you're going to have and advantages, but there's also things that you're going to give up as well.
Right. All right, so let's do something a little fun.
No, I remember this game.
Yeah. So Temple Run. There is a Temple Run 2 out, and there is actually a fake version of Temple Run 2 that is out available on the App Store, or for I guess it's the Play Store for Android, and it's malware. So you're downloading what you think is a game, and what you're doing is really infecting yourself. The malware is let's see, malicious routines. They send notifications, so it's not really a severe piece of malware. It looks like it just does some annoying things more than anything. But the fact that it's malware at all exists.
This is more geared towards kids, though.
Yeah, that's true.
You get kids.
I'll play
that are
games
out there.
too.
Yeah, I mean, we all do every now and again. You're sitting.
I'll
like
play that
waiting
one,
in line
but
to check out.
yeah,
play a little game.
So yeah, that was kind of focused on Android. Temple Run 2 for Android. And while we're on the Android bandwagon here, there is spam that's going around. It's called Express Spam. Is the name of the malware, and it actually uses your phone to send out spam. That's the first time I've seen a phone send out spam before. But that was it's about 2 weeks old, and it's been out for a little bit. It's apparently been a great success for the malware authors. It distributed a lot of malware. It said there was thousands of devices infected. And throughout the cycle, there's between 75,000 and 450,000 pieces of personal information that it stole during this process as well.
This all boils down to the fact that, I mean, Android has never been that good at vetting their apps out.
No, actually, that's not getting any better. However, I will say the operating system itself is getting better at doing some things to protect itself.
So it's got better corrective controls, but there's nothing preventive in it. I mean, in security, you got three kinds of controls. You got preventive, detective, and corrective, and that's you got to look at all those.
Right, they're not doing very much preventive at all. So, yeah, and we'll stick on the Androids. Basically, it's Trend Micro has said that in 2013 they expect the Android will hit 1 million malicious apps. That's a lot. That's a lot, especially considering I was reading earlier on one of the things that in the year 2002 we had less than 1 million apps or pieces of malware for all Windows.
But I mean that's cumulative though.
No, I agree.
I mean that would be more. I mean you find them and you correct them, so it's more of a statistic just to give you an idea of how many.
Right. It's one of those things though where it shows you that since Android's becoming so popular, it's going to become another target.
But I mean this goes back to where it goes to digitally signing your apps and knowing and having reputation.
Right.
The biggest thing is the problem that I see that's out there is anybody will download anything. If you got something that looks like it's fun and it's out there, you're going to click it. And,
right.
I mean, and you're going to pull it down, and you're not going to know who it.
Especially when you think it's a free version, something you got to pay for. Yeah.
Nobody wants to pay for anything.
That's right. That's why that's why it works so well.
There's nothing bad. There's nothing bad about finding stuff that's out there. There's many people out there that put applications and services that are out there that are free, that are good services. But it's knowing the reputation of where you're getting your information from. Okay,
so another article that we said out there about this is again on Android. That people think they're safe on Android, and really you're not. They did a research on the Android store, the Play Store, and there was 45,000 pieces of malware, and that was by F-Secure. So as Android grows, it's just going to become more and more. Again, this is the whole thing about Android becoming so popular.
But it's everything now. I mean, I would even see. I mean, it's how you vet your apps, how you install your apps, and what you allow.
Right.
Your
It's
users
more of
to
a
do.
user education, you know, and in the long run is what you need to do to keep yourself safe. All right, so let's talk about IE6. IE6 still isn't dead yet, although it's getting there.
You know what? I've seen this happen before, where you have antiquated versions of software out here because that the HTML may be rendered differently in IE, or
Yeah.
I mean, what's being, or how different components are loaded up, or what's being allowed, and it's dangerous.
So what they were saying now is it's 0.4% in the U.S. left of that. However, in China, it's still 21.3%, which doesn't surprise me because they basically don't buy anything over there.
But there's recent vulnerabilities that came out with 6, 7, and 8 that came out. I
Right.
mean, I wonder if Microsoft almost welcomes that, because it means, hey, you got to get off this, and it's like
Yeah.
the old adage of Cortez burned his ships in order for his men to go to the new world. I mean, you're forcing everybody, or you're giving everybody quote unquote incentive to go to the latest and
Right.
the greatest.
And the funny thing is, I actually have a countdown site. It's called IE6countdown.com. That's where I got those numbers from. So they're actually making a game out of it now, watching the countdown for IE6, which has to be like one of the worst web browsers ever. All right, so let's talk about Red October. You familiar with Red October?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
Okay.
I like Sean Connery. He was great.
Oh, yeah. So the Red October malware that was targeting governments worldwide, they're calling it the Swiss Army knife of espionage.
It's called Ramius.
Yes. It actually had over 1,000 separate components. I mean, you go through the list of things that it did. It's pretty crazy how much was in that piece of malware. It's very flexible. And it's probably, I don't want to say it's state sponsored, but it probably is some state sponsored, like other big pieces of malware.
Black Hat Canvas.
Yeah, things I don't want to say. It actually went undetected for 5 years. It hit itself that well. It did recon, so it was that's one of the modules that it did. So it would get information about machines that it infected. It was very stealthy and very quick and quiet. It would download things to memory and get rid of them real fast. So it looked like you couldn't tell it was running. It's pretty interesting. They've actually taken.
I mean, even if it's running, you have to have. I mean, you have to have a footprint for it, though. That's
Right.
the thing.
There's
or a
something
timer
small
in the
somewhere,
background.
but the way they said it was working was it was downloading the executable, running it, and then getting it out.
Were there any TDSS components to that, or was there anything
No,
outside
it doesn't.
of the main
It didn't mention
operating
anything about
systems,
TDSS anywhere.
I've heard of it, but I wasn't familiar with. That's my
Th-
biggest
this
thing. Is
they've
where
gone
they're
through and
starting
actually
out.
reversed it. They actually infected machines to have it download all the agents to see what all it did. So it's pretty interesting. So I'm still trying to go through it all, but it would actually realize when you had an iPhone attached, and it would try to infect the iPhone. Or if you had a USB thumb drive, it would try to infect the thumb drive.
I mean, if it's at such a low level that's running, I mean, that's some stealth.
It was very stealthy, but now they know what it is. They can look it up a little bit better and do better with that. So they actually came out with you go on through everything. See everything I have right here. Talk about everything that they've done and reverse it. So if you're interested in what it does, it really has great detail out there. They did a nice job on documenting the reversal. All right, so let's talk about the Cisco router bug. Actually, I should say Linksys. And Linksys, which is currently owned by Cisco, but is changing hands to Belkin as of this week. Cisco sold off Linksys to Belkin. But last week, they actually announced that they had a root vulnerability on one router. Now, the router's kind of old. It's a WRT54GL. And if you remember, those are the old blue ones.
Yeah, I had one by my disco globe.
Yeah,
It's great.
Yeah. So that doesn't affect anything that's real current. Most people have the small black ones since Cisco bought them. But it is a root vulnerability. And
I'm
they are going to take
surprised
care
that
of
they're
that.
even supporting that stuff anymore. It's so long.
I'm surprised they are too. It's that old. But I guess because it's a root vulnerability, they want to make sure they take care of it. So they specify within about a week. You have to be physically connected to the inside of the router to get the vulnerability. So basically, they're saying don't leave your friends on your router if you don't trust them, which I don't do it anyway. So that only makes sense. The research firm Defense Code is the one who made the findings public, and initially apparently Cisco said they had it fixed already, but they proved that they didn't. So, all right, so. I never heard of the story. Have you heard of Zaxbys?
Yeah, I've heard of Zaxbys. That's a southern chain.
Yeah.
Like when we go down to our place down in Florida, well, I mean, you'll see Zaxbys all over the place, like on 85 and like.
I never heard of them,
like
so I had to go out
South
and look out see what they
Virginia.
were.
Pretty good restaurant.
But they had a point of sale system breach.
Yeah.
So there's a whole article about that. Just goes to show that the point of sale is still a a way to people to get in and get information, credit cards.
I mean, that's huge. I mean, the point of sale system. I mean, you break into the point of sale system.
Right. You got you got all kinds of stuff in there
Yeah.
you need. So I don't know how big Zaxbys is. I don't know if they're like they're tier 1 or tier 2 PCI provider. You think?
Oh, from the experience you and I have, I mean, previously with point of sale systems, yeah, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, the thing of it is I would assume the size of them, they're at least tier 2.
At least tier 2. So if you have a Zaxby's anywhere near you, check your credit card statements just to make sure. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the future of malware, and it's changing. And there's a couple of different companies that have gone out and made predictions this year about how it's going to change. And the first thing I talk about is multiple platforms. We've already talked about the multiple platforms. As that grows, they're going to see growth in malware growth or malware attempt growth in these different platforms as well. The thing that they're afraid of is as people get so many devices, they're just going to like want to put their information in and go and not secure their devices, which I think actually happens now because they don't understand how to secure their devices. So you get a new iPad and you already have an iPhone, you put in your information and you just go.
I can take it one step further though, and it's even when you think you're securing your device is not necessarily secure.
That's,
I mean,
that's very true.
What you think is secure, I mean, it's a relative thing. What you think is secure and what
right.
when in reality
it's like securing your router, you know.
Exactly.
So people have different opinions on how you secure your router at home, and that generally does not go far enough to secure your router at home. They predict that the conventional malware threats will gradually evolve. Actually, not many new threats as much as there will be more advanced ways of getting you infected with something. As that's going to go that way versus the type of threat that it is more than anything.
I mean, I saw that before. You and I have seen that where there's vendors that are actually coming out with reputation scanning. Where
that's right.
As opposed to coming up with a signature set, they're looking for the heuristics, what they call it, where they're looking for similar patterns, something that just doesn't look quite right. They'll send it right out into the. I mean, this is where cloud services have its advantage, where
that's right
because they can information out.
Right, and you all share that knowledge together as well.
It's going to be more collaborative when it comes to the correction and removal of malware because you're going to find out a lot quicker, as opposed to people going out and proactively these antivirus companies and looking for malware and having honeypots out in the different areas and pulling that information in and actively infecting it. You as being infected are going to be actually helping in the long run if you're choosing a product wisely that has that capability.
Right, and the thing about signatures is they're always behind because you can't make a signature till you find the actual piece of malware. So that's why AV vendors really don't work that well as if they use signature based. So that'll be changing as well.
Very much.
And there's actually a lot of companies that are getting involved in that. I mean, like
there's big money in that.
Yeah, that's right. Symantec eventually actually took out antivirus out of their name. If you look at their website, it's now Internet Security because they didn't want to say that it was all antivirus because they're looking at the whole.
I mean, it's how close to the behind the wave you are, and you want to get in front of the wave. I mean, you're never going to truly get in front of the wave, but if you get as close as possible as you can, where you're looking at the heuristics. If it doesn't smell right, let's pull it up. Let's create something.
And there's a lot of companies working on heuristics type thing. Look at the FireEye example. That's a network inline, not necessarily on a machine. But then there's other companies that are working on things that are machine based as well that do something very similar to that. So. Another prediction, which I don't quite get this one, is Africa will become the new safe harbor for cyber criminals. I thought that I did something. And I guess what they're trying to say is that the bandwidth quality for Africa is now becoming closer to the other third world countries where the malware is being generated. So they see that as a growth industry.
It is a growth industry. I mean, I've been learning through some of the experiences I've had relatively recently that Africa is a. I mean, a lot of it was from a speaking perspective and call center perspective. That's where a new great big untapped labor pool is for people to be able to call as opposed to going to Asia or the subcontinent for call centers. I mean, Africa. I mean, English is probably more spoken in certain areas of Africa and well spoken. The Queen's English and and you're
especially in South
Africa,
a
lot of business down there.
Right. So we'll see how that goes this week. This year, we'll see how that grows. So we just talked about this a second ago. Antivirus makers struggle to address today's next generation viruses, and there's some statistics here. I mentioned earlier in 2000 there were less than 1 million pieces of malware, and in 2010 there was 49 million.
I would argue there's more than that.
I thought that number was low too.
That's very low.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. And one of the things that really changed is it used to be that they were doing it for glory or being an annoyance more than anything. They would put their name on the screen and, or just destroy your machine because they want to destroy it. Now they're stealthy.
It's about money.
Yeah, it's all about money. You don't even know they're even there. And I think that's something people don't get because they think they're going to see when they're infected. And
you're never going to know it.
Yeah, you don't know.
A good guy, you won't even know it. You wife, the house will be gone. The
Yep.
mortgage, you'll be bankrupt, and you're not.
Doesn't
even
take
there.
long. Yeah. Antivirus is reactive, which we just talked about, because you can't really do an antivirus pattern until you actually get the piece of the sample malware. So they are looking at new techniques. If you're in Australia and you get a tax agent report delayed tax returns, don't believe it. It really is a zip file download of a piece of malware. They're trying to get you to download a report to. They say you're downloading a report to see your back taxes, and it's not really that. It's really a piece of malware. Very similar to a piece of malware to what we get with the FedEx email here in the United States. And have you heard about the Mega? Remember Mega Download?
Yeah.
So that guy has
Oh,
created.
that's that guy that, yeah.
He hasn't gone to jail yet.
Yeah,
so
but I'm waiting for that.
yeah, but he's created a new site now, another download site, and he's claiming that it's very secure, everything's encrypted. So, but somebody already cracked it and said that there was a weakness in the Mega passwords. When you get your password confirmation, that the password is in the confirmation, so it's in clear text. So that's not very strong. All right, we've just spent a half hour or a little more talking about security for this week.
Hey, that's great. I mean, a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, that covers the news for this week. I just want to put out that if you're watching this live, you can always download us on iTunes, or you can go to YouTube and subscribe. If you go to our website, you get the show notes as well as the other shows that we have online and the other episodes of Security Decoded. I'd like to thank Chris for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'll have him be calling you soon to come back.
All right.
All right. All right. Have a great week.
Thank you.